Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, we're going to go through every single AFC team and give you one undervalued player that everyone's sleeping on that you need to be targeting in trades or on waiver wires, even for some of these guys in your dynasty leagues, maybe even in your redraft leagues as well, or best ball. Just some sleepers, guys, some fantasy football sleepers on every AFC team. And of course, tomorrow we'll be talking NFC teams, so go ahead and stay tuned for tomorrow. But for today's episode, go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome in. Happy to see you all in the chat. Dakota, Jason, Jamie, Mr. Literature himself, and Gerard. How you doing? Or Jared. Some days I say Jared. Some days I say Gerard. Gerard, can you let me know? And hopefully I remember if you let me know. But I feel like I keep messing that one up. Jeremy, how's it going? Everyone tuning in, whether you're listening to the podcast via link in the description, go check out the Wake and Take podcast. If you're tuning into Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. It's awesome to see you all. Terminal Sarcasm. The Freak. My gosh, man. Everyone is in here this morning. We've got sleepers. We've got fantasy football to talk about. Let's start AFC North. Let's go with the AFC North. We're going to start the day off with some Mike Gesicki action out in Cincinnati. Jason, why is Mike Gesicki a sleeper? Every single time we get in on Mike Gesicki, he disappoints us. Yeah, sure. I get it. And that's why he's a sleeper now. Right now, Mike Gesicki is way down there in the rankings. I believe he's like tight end like 36 right now over at PlayerProfiler. Let me double check that for you. But either way, way down there. And when you look historically at the Cincinnati Bengals tight end room, they have been pretty consistent in terms of their production. Last year, from weeks 9 to 18, Tanner Hudson, that's right, Tanner Hudson even had 300 yards and a touchdown in only 9 games. Hayden Hurst in 14 games in 2022 had 439 yards and 4 touchdowns and averaged 5 targets a game. CJ Uzomah the year before that had nearly 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in 16 games in 2021 and averaged about 4 targets a game, but that heated up towards the end of the season. And we've seen now in the past few years that the Bengals tight end, maybe doesn't have this massive ceiling, but still has a couple games where they, get 8, 10 targets and have a touchdown. Mike Gesicki, with his athleticism, with his previous production in the league, even if it hasn't been super great, has still been fine. I mean, he's got a couple seasons over 700 yards, has a few seasons with more than 5 or more touchdowns, still has that second round draft capital, still only 28 years old, and going to a Bengals team that's lost a lot of their interior threats, right? Tyler Boyd is gone. The tight end room is cleared out. It's Mike Gesicki. So, I mean, I think that he's going to be pretty decent this year when I look at it. So at tight end 32 on PlayerProfiler and an ADP of around tight end 30 on Underdog right now, and in other things, that's really not that bad. I think especially in Underdog. Say we're stacking the Bengals. Say we've got some Joe Burrow. You can get Mike Gesicki at the end of the draft, like in the 18th round, and probably have a tight end on your team, at least for a decent floor. I'm not saying Mike Gesicki is going to have a massive ceiling, although maybe he could. I'm sure that he might have some spike weeks in this offense. It's the Cincinnati Bengals we're talking about here. But even that, I think, somewhere around 5 targets a game, get 400 to 500, maybe even 600 yards and a few touchdowns. That's a decent floor at his price tag. So if you are looking for some tight end help, stick around because I've got a lot more tight ends to talk about, but go ahead and get Mike Gesicki, as I think he's my second favorite sleeper tight end. The next team in the AFC North right now is the Ravens out of Baltimore, and we'll be talking about Tez Walker. Of course, you guys know I've talked about Devontae Walker a decent amount of times now on this show. His big thing, Devontae Walker, as we know, a really good deep threat in college at UNC, and previously before transferring, is a deep threat, very good speed. He ran, of course, a 4.36 and has above 85th percentile, pretty much all of his workout metrics. He's 6'2", he's almost 200 pounds. He's got the 4th round draft capital, and he's going to a Baltimore offense that has had a successful field stretcher I mean, pretty much every season that Lamar Jackson's been the quarterback. Last year, we saw Nelson Aguilar have 4 games with 10 or more points scored, 4 touchdowns. The year before that, even Deshaun Jackson had himself a game when he was, basically out of the league. Hollywood Brown was super successful in Baltimore, had his only 1,000-yard season, finished as a top 20 wide receiver. Devontae Walker going to a good fit. There is not really a field-stretching option on there. I know Nelson Aguilar is still there, but they only extended him for like $3 million. Like, it wasn't anything crazy like that. Devontae Walker, with that draft capital, I think will eventually, towards the end of the season, claim that field stretching role and probably have a few decent games and maybe even a nice floor. I mean, it's going to be Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers, but they're going to take shots in this offense. They always have. And Devontae Walker was a burner at UNC. I saw it at the Senior Bowl as well, where he was just consistently beating his coverage deep and intermediately, but just could not reel it in. And again, that's going to be the big issue here. Devontae Walker fell in this draft because he has a drop issue. Going into this process, he was expected to be a second, maybe third round pick. Fell into the middle of the 4th, but that's something that can be worked on. They are going from a smaller football to a bigger football when they're going from college to the NFL. So some wide receivers inherently are probably going to have a little bit of an issue adjusting to the different ball size. But a full offseason with the Baltimore Ravens, working with Lamar Jackson, getting this role, I think that he'll be good. And even if he maybe doesn't have 100% catch rate, he's still going to score some touchdowns and probably at least outperform his current value right now. If you go to Player Profiler and type in Devontae Walker in the rankings, he is sitting at wide receiver 80. And you could get him right now for Rashad Bateman, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Hyatt, Treylon Burks. And I just, I want to attach myself to the Ravens offense any way I can, but also a rookie with a pretty solid profile with a decent role on a good offense is always someone that I'm going to be buying into. So give me some Tez Walker, guys. That is the Ravens sleeper. Next, we'll go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I mean, you guys probably already know where I'm going with this one. It's Justin Fields. It's going to be hard to pick a skill position sleeper for the Pittsburgh Steelers just because Najee Harris, I think, is appropriately valued. Jalen Warren is appropriately valued. George Pickens is probably appropriately valued. Roman Wilson is appropriately valued. Pat Freiermuth is appropriately valued. So where do you go from here? You just try to take a stab at the ceiling when you're looking at the Steelers offense here. And Justin Fields, yes, has not been a great NFL quarterback, especially in the passing game, has not even had a season with at least a 65% completion percentage, really has not been that good as a passer. But as a rusher, and even as just, scoring points for an offense, he's been pretty good, especially for fantasy football. He's been really, really good. And one thing we know about the NFL, and especially about fan bases, is we all want the exciting option. And Russell Wilson maybe will come out and have the starting job early in the season, maybe throughout the preseason and camps. But at some point, Justin Fields is going to take over. I guarantee you guys, maybe even in the preseason, Justin Fields is going to run wild for a touchdown, and you're just going to start hearing the chants from the crowd. Justin, 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 Justin. And then by week 6, he's starting, and who knows how good he's going to be. I don't know. I think that he'll be better, though. I really do think that landing in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, with Arthur Smith, who both have had some decent quarterback success in their careers, especially Arthur Smith. I mean, he was a guy who has been kind of coined with reviving Ryan Tannehill, making him good. And even all of the faults with Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota with Atlanta, they were still pretty decent for fantasy. I mean, they were putting up points. I mean, I remember relying on Desmond Ridder and Scott Fishbowl last year. I know the scoring was a little bit premium for some of these mobile quarterbacks, but I mean, he still had like multiple games with 30-something points for me and was actually really, really helping my squad, minus all the turnovers. So I think that Justin Fields has gone to a really good spot. I mean, we know that he asked to go to Pittsburgh. We already know now at camp that a lot of people have come out and said his mechanics are looking different as a passer. So I think he's learning a lot. I think he's put his head down. I think that his time in Chicago has, made him have a chip on his shoulder, but also just a little bit more mature and understanding of where he needs to be as an NFL quarterback. I mean, he's still only 25 years old. He's still a former first-round pick. And you're telling me that all he has to do is beat out Russell Wilson, who we've all kind of coined as washed over the last couple seasons? Sign me up right now. Justin Fields should not be acquirable at the price tag he is right now. And I know he's a little bit more expensive than like quarterback 24 would suggest, just because almost everyone that is rostering Justin Fields is just holding on hope and holding on hope and holding on hope, myself included. But I do think at some point he's going to start. And when he starts, he's going to score fantasy points. Will he be a good NFL quarterback as a passer? That's really the question, right? But either way, I think that you can buy Justin Fields right now in your super flex leagues. Let him sit there. When he starts, he's going to score you some points. And then maybe he does end up kind of turning it around and becoming a good quarterback and starting for the Steelers for, I mean, really the rest of his career. Like, that is a range of outcomes here. He's only 25, still really young, and still just incredibly talented. The thing with Justin Fields, I'm going to go ahead and be frank here. He's not a backup quarterback. He's not. He's either a starter or he's out of the league. And I hate to say it, but it's true. When you're this talented, you can't be a backup. You just can't. It doesn't make any sense. And egos come into play here and stuff. Not saying that Justin Fields is an egomaniac or anything like that, but just like when you're that talented, you're either a starter or you're gone. Like if I'm Justin Fields and I'm that good, I'm not going to be a backup. I'm just not. And I'm pretty sure that that's kind of how he feels here too with his last season. It's just a little 1-year contract here in Pittsburgh, trying to prove himself with that chip on the shoulder. I'm going to bet on him this year at his current price tag. The last AFC North team to talk about is the Cleveland Browns. And we're going to go to the running back room and we're going to talk Jerome Ford. Now, I also think that Nick Chubb is a buy right now, but when you're talking sleepers, you've got to go even deeper. And Jerome Ford is somehow cheaper than Nick Chubb, despite being the leading rusher for the Cleveland Browns last season, and despite not being almost 29 years old coming off of an ACL injury. Jerome Ford and Nick Chubb, I think next season will be fine. I mean, if you look at the Cleveland Browns offense, all they do is run the ball. They were top 5 in rush attempts last season, top 5 in rush attempts the year before that. They were 9th in rush attempts in 2021, and again, top 5 in rush attempts in 2020. Last year, they were 12th in rush yards, and in 2022, 2021, and 2020, the Cleveland Browns were top 6 in rush yards, of course, coming off the heels of Nick Chubb. But last year, we saw Jerome Ford finish the year with over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, averaged 12.4 points per game, which was 25th in the league. And he did all that with only a 50% opportunity share. So, you know, with a split backfield, him and Kareem Hunt, he was able to produce a lot. So even this year, in a split backfield with Nick Chubb, he should be able to produce a lot. And I would assume that to start the season, Jerome Ford is even out-touching Nick Chubb as they get him back up to speed. Now, again, I do still think that Nick Chubb will be out there this season and probably fine. I'm trying to scoop up Nick Chubb as well. But Jerome Ford is cheaper than Nick Chubb somehow, healthier, younger, probably more explosive at his point in the career, not coming off an injury. So I want to bet on him right now. He's RB 42 on Player Profiler's rankings. Nick Chubb up at RB 35, but both of them, right? Both of them I think are buys, but Jerome Ford a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier to acquire. So give me some Ford. The next division, we'll just go from the north to the south, and we'll talk Houston Texans. And I don't feel great about this one. And it's going to be, again, as I talked about with the Steelers, it's kind of hard to find a sleeper on this offense. I mean, obviously, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, those players are so expensive. Dalton Schultz probably accurately valued. Joe Mixon probably accurately valued, maybe a little undervalued, but I don't think we can classify Joe Mixon as a sleeper. So we'll just go with his handcuff, Dameon Pierce. As we know, with running backs, especially running backs in fantasy, they have massive contingent upside. And when you're looking at Joe Mixon, 27 years old, coming off of always being a bell cow, tons or not much tread left on his tire, there's a potential here that he just can't handle the full workload, or that he gets injured and Dameon Pierce has this massive contingent upside. But even if he doesn't, you know, last year, Dameon Pierce still had a 44% opportunity share, and he did that with only a 32% snap share, which is pretty impressive to get that many touches despite not being on the field that much. And I know he didn't do that great with it, but he still had a ton of volume, 145 carries for 416 yards, and had 13 receptions for 100 yards and 2 total touchdowns. And of course, if you look at his rookie season, he finished his rookie year with over 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. And he did all that in only 13 games. He's 5'10", he's 224 pounds, he's only 24. He's got a decent workout profile. If anything happens to Joe Mixon, you're talking about a starting running back on the Houston Texans, and that's probably pretty valuable. So on the Texans, that's going to be my sleeper. I think Dameon Pierce has been wholly disrespected at this point. I know it was a bad season last year. I think he averaged like 2.9 yards per carry, and he was outperformed by Devin Singletary. But still, this is a game of volume. This is a game of opportunity, and there's a ton of it heading Dameon Pierce's way if the cards fall right. So I don't mind rostering Dameon Pierce this year. I don't. And of course, The next AFC South team is the Indianapolis Colts, and you guys already know where I'm going with this one. My man, Jelani Woods. Jelani Woods is the most athletic tight end in the NFL, it appears, when you look at his profile, 6'7", 250 pounds, and every workout metric in the 90th percentile or higher. He has really high draft capital as well, early in the 3rd round just 2 years ago, but last year, unfortunately, missed the whole season due to an injury. I think now he's going to come back healthy and go into an offense that heavily utilizes their tight ends. Last year, all of their tight ends combined for over 100 targets, over 800 receiving yards, and 11 touchdowns. That's a lot of volume and a lot of production. Jelani Woods is a true alpha type tight end, but he could come in and take a good majority, if not most of that, for himself. We saw in his rookie season a few flashpoints. One early in the year, he had a game-winning touchdown. In fact, he scored 2 touchdowns against the Kansas City Chiefs, but one of them was game-winning, which is just awesome to have that clutch factor as a rookie. And then also later in the year against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he had an 8 reception off of 9 target game that he took for 98 yards. So he's been able to handle volume as well. If he can return this year to form, be healthy, take the tight end 1 spot, I think that he will truly explode in this offense. The athleticism is impressive. The profile is impressive. The potential volume is impressive. And this guy right now on the Player Profiler Dynasty rankings is sitting all the way down at tight end 42. You hear that? Tight end 42 for Jelani Woods. Next to Jaheim Bell, Kylan Granson, Darnell Washington. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Go ahead and get some Jelani Woods. I think that he's going to be special this year. And even if he isn't, he will be good, right? Like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns from a guy that you got off your waiver wire. Sign me up. And I think he could do even more. I really do like the profile, the potential there with Jelani Woods. Shane Steichen coming out and saying I wish he was healthy last year. Like, I'm excited to finally be able to use him. Give me some Jelani Woods. The next team is the Jaguars, and we will go with Gabe Davis. I am not comfortable enough picking a running back. I'm just not. I know we're hearing all the rumblings about Bigsby, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So I'm going to actually take a stab at a wide receiver here and go with Gabe Davis, who's in the wide receiver 70 range right now in Dynasty, which is kind of understandable. This is a guy who is very frustrating to manage in fantasy. I get it. But he has had, of course, the spike weeks, but definite, at least solid production. Last year, 750 yards and 7 touchdowns. Year before that, 800 yards and 7 touchdowns. And it's just kind of been a decent producer going to a Jacksonville offense now that A, paid him 3 years, $39 million contract, but B, Trevor Lawrence has kind of spread the ball around last year. Talk about it a lot. Evan Ingram had some spike weeks. Christian Kirk had some spike weeks. Calvin Ridley had some spike weeks. Even Zay Jones had some spike weeks. I mean, we were starting Parker Washington last year, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and take a bet on Gabe Davis at his price tag. I know they brought in Brian Thomas, but Christian Kirk, he's returning from an injury. And Gabe Davis, I think, is just going to have a role. I think he'll have some spike weeks. Not going to, of course, know when they happen. But I think you'll see a small uptick in value as the year goes on. And at the very least, kind of retain where he's at. And if he ever has a spike week and you want to get rid of him, you can sell him. Sure. But, you know, they're committed to him. $40 million for 3 years is not anything to scoff at. On top of the production we've seen from him in his career, I'll just take a chance on him. I don't mind some boomer bust guys on my team. And when it comes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, this is probably the best one. So the next team is the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans right now, of course, the big buy when it comes to the Titans is going to be Will Levis. But it's hard to classify him as a sleeper. So we're going to go even deeper and talk about Tyler Boyd right now, who is another player that I just think is totally disrespected. And I don't really understand it. Right now, he's sitting at wide receiver 95 on Player Profiler's rankings. But we live in a world now where Tyler Boyd is going to an offense that could potentially lead the league in pass attempts, but also is staying with his head coach or with his former offensive coordinator, now head coach in Tennessee, that utilized him a ton in Cincinnati. There's not really any slot competition really either on the Bengals. You know, Kyle Phillips just is not good, and Chigakonkwo just hasn't really been that good either. The other guy who can maybe take some targets over the middle. So I think Tyler Boyd, honestly, like genuinely, I think that Tyler Boyd is in for a pretty decent season here. 660 yards a year last year, 770 before that, 800 before that, 800, 1,000, 5 touchdowns or more pretty much every single year. For the most part, averaging about 10 points per game. Again, going to an offense where he's going to have a pretty decent role that's going to pass the ball a ton. Tyler Boyd, especially if I'm a competing team, I'm getting. I think that he's a perfect player to just have on the end of your bench. And if you have to rely on him in your flex at some point in the season, you probably can. And it would probably be decent. I'm not, again, a lot of these players, I'm not like talking about a massive ceiling for, except for Jelani Woods. I think Jelani Woods really could be unique. But Tyler Boyd, I mean, obviously, I know he's older. But I mean, I like that he's staying with his coach. I like that he's going to a team that's going to pass the ball a ton. And I mean, it's literally going to be probably the same system that we saw in Cincinnati, one that he's already familiar with. So Tyler Boyd, I honestly, I don't get it. All of them, really. Like DeAndre Hopkins, I would love to put in this list, but how can you call DeAndre Hopkins a sleeper? But he's a big buy for me right now as well. I think that this Tennessee offense is just totally slept on right now in general. But the biggest sleeper on the Titans offense is going to be Tyler Boyd. But again, I'm just going to say buy them all. Get D-Hop, get Boyd, get Spears, get Pollard, get Levis, get Okonkwo, get Ridley, I guess, maybe. I don't know. But either way, that is the AFC South. Let's go from the north to south to now the east, and we'll talk the New England Patriots, and we'll go with another tight end here. We're going to say Hunter Henry is a sleeper right now. On our Dynasty rankings, he is sitting at tight end 30, I believe. Yep, right there. Tight end 30, but he was just extended by the New England Patriots there for a couple more seasons. And there is not much tight end competition anymore. Not that there ever really was, but you know, for the last season, Mike Gesicki was there and he took a few, like 200 yards and a couple touchdowns. The few years before that, Jonnu Smith was there, who wasn't necessarily taking a lot, but still took some. Now it's really just him. And the bonus is that the wide receiver room is incredibly crowded. It is hard to find which wide receiver to pick. I'm going with Javon Baker. But I mean, there's a world even where Tyquan Thornton becomes a stud just because he's the only deep threat on the offense. So with me not knowing which wide receiver to choose, I figured I would just go with a tight end that you could get for free right now, who's more than likely going to see some decent production. Last year, he had 8.6 points per game, had 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. And the 4 years before that has had over 500 yards. In 2021, he had 9 touchdowns. And in 2021, 2020, and 2019, and 17 and 16 has averaged about 10 points per game or higher. So we've seen some solid floor from Hunter Henry, and I think that's going to continue, especially with Jacoby Brissett. I'm sure that he likes tight ends. And then also Drake May. Rookie quarterbacks generally come in and like their safety nets like Hunter Henry has been in his past. So I think that Hunter Henry is someone that should pretty easily outperform his value and be an easy little sleeper here on the New England Patriots offense. And staying within tight end, we'll go to the New York Jets and talk Tyler Conklin, as this is another guy who has just consistently produced. Last year, 600 yards with no touchdowns, but still 600 yards with that quarterback play is impressive. And the 2 years before that had over 500 yards and has averaged at least 7 points per game the last 3 years. He's got a decent profile. The only thing is he's undersized. He's 6'3", 250, but he has good burst and agility. And last year, his efficiency was pretty good. He was top 10 in slot snaps and routes run, deep targets, air yards, and finished pretty high in true catch rate as well, number 6 in true catch rate. So Tyler Conklin has been a pretty decent tight end for the Jets and really throughout his career. I mean, decent. And so I think right now when you're looking at the Jets offense, if you have like an Aaron Rodgers, for example, you could stack him with this tight end who I think will, be about the same, right? 600 yards, but maybe actually get some touchdowns this season if the offense gets better. This is another guy that you can get for free right now. So I think Tyler Conklin's being a little slept on. And a bonus sleeper for the New York Jets, why not Alan Lazard? Why not? Like, seriously, I asked this question because Aaron Rodgers and Alan Lazard, they played together in Green Bay. They have a really good friendship. I assume that Aaron Rodgers is going to look his way at some point over the season. An injury might have to happen. But Alan Lazard, another guy that's almost on probably 100% of waiver wires if you actually took a look at it. And I think he has some potential here. Mike Williams can't stay healthy. And I don't know if Malachi Corley is going to be a true wide receiver. I think he's going to be a bit more gadgety. So that's a little bit of a bonus sleeper. If you want to get even deeper, Alan Lazard, why not? Another sleeper in the AFC East is going to be Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills. Ray Davis. Buffalo Bills, Ray Davis, running back. that they just took in the 4th round. He has had back-to-back seasons with over 1,000 rush yards in the SEC. And fun fact, last year actually led all running backs in college football with receiving touchdowns, which is pretty cool. This is a guy that is a really good prospect going to an offense that desperately needs an RB2. And so I think that not only does Ray Davis have a floor, but he also has some upside. Last year, we saw Latavius Murray, Ty Johnson, Damian Harris, and even Leonard Fournette take some opportunity away from James Cook on the goal line and short yardage and between the tackles type stuff. That's exactly what Ray Davis is going to be asked to do this year. So I could expect, maybe over 100 carries for Ray Davis. He's actually has some receiving chops as well. Maybe he could get up there to like 10, 15 receptions on the season as well, and score some touchdowns on a pretty electric offense. Ray Davis, of course, not necessarily a big sleeper. I mean, I know that he's being drafted in our rookie drafts right now, but he's still really cheap to acquire. So I'm going to go with him because, again, I am not sure which wide receiver I want to pick here on Buffalo. They're all kind of expensive, to be honest, for their potential outcome. They all have a wide range of outcomes. Like Keon Coleman could be the dude. Marcus Valdes-Scantling could score some points. Khalil Shakur could be the dude. Curtis Samuel could be the dude. I don't know. I do know that Ray Davis is going to an opportunity here to where he could be the between the tackles grinder and score some touchdowns for the Buffalo Bills. So I want to scoop him up where I can, especially if I own James Cook. And the last AFC East sleeper, you guys probably know where I'm going with this for the Miami Dolphins, staying in the running back room and staying with a rookie, Jalen Wright. Jalen Wright, of course, ran a sub-4.4 40-yard dash, has electric speed, and has some decent size at 5'11", 210 pounds. Last year at Tennessee, had over 1,000 rushing yards and over 100 receiving yards, scored himself some touchdowns as well. And he's going to an offense last year and the year before that, really, where the Dolphins have just used a committee. Now, last year wasn't a big committee because of injuries, and it was like one person was healthy and one wasn't pretty much the whole season. But Raheem Mostert only had a 53% opportunity share. Devon Achane only had a 40% opportunity share. So I think that this year it's going to be Devon Achane getting the most, Raheem Mostert getting the second most, but Jalen Wright, sniffing 25 to 30% opportunities as well. And if there's an injury or anything, then Jalen Wright is going to an electric opportunity with tons and tons of upside if an injury happens. But I think there's upside here even without an injury. These are some home run hitting RBs. And I know that he was taken in the 4th round, but the Dolphins actually spent their 2025 3rd round pick to acquire that 4th round pick. So we could almost say it's a 3rd round pick that they used on Jalen Wright because that is what they did. Which signifies that they really wanted him and they want to utilize him. They'll find a spot for him in this offense. And at the very least, when we're going into 2025, Raheem Mostert should be gone. And we're talking about a backfield duo between Wright and Achane. I want to acquire Wright while I can. And I think not only does he have upside this season, but also plenty of upside going forward in Dynasty as well. So I would say buy Jalen Wright while you still can. Which brings us to the final division in the AFC, the AFC West. And of course, with the Chargers, we're just going to go with Kamani Vidal. Kamani Vidal is a player that I expect to take over this running back room by the end of the year. I would not be surprised if it starts out Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. I really wouldn't. We know that Greg Roman is the coordinator there, and that was their former running backs coach in Baltimore. They already have the connection together. But J.K. Dobbins, of course, has the injury history. And Gus Edwards, as consistent as he is, he's consistently boring as well. So I would expect a little electricity, some explosiveness from Kamani Vidal to really make this coaching staff want to play him. He was college football's leading rusher last year with 1,661 rush yards and 15 touchdowns. Also added 200 receiving yards. He ran a 4.46 40-yard dash. He's got a 90th percentile BMI at 5'8", 213. So he's built out. He has production. He has explosiveness. And he got a really good landing spot that seems to want to rely on their run game with tons of upside on this offense. So give me some Kamani Vidal wherever I can. Give them to me. For the Chiefs, and I hate to say it, you can even tell by the picture I put a frowny face, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Right? I mean, all of the wide receivers are going to be accurately valued, if not overvalued right now. So all you can really do is look at the running back room. And Isaiah Pacheco is a stud, but his handcuff right now is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Jerick McKinnon has not been re-signed. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the handcuff. Now you could argue maybe it's Keontae Ingram. Maybe Deneric Prince has gotten himself off the practice squad. But we know that the Chiefs just like CEH. We do. Even last year, was sniffing the field without injuries. And we saw some production from him as well. Not a great amount, but some. Last year, he had 5 games with a 30% or higher snap share. One of them, he had 20 points. He scored a 20-point game. He had 13 carries and 4 receptions, finished the day with 100 yards and a touchdown. Not bad. In the other games, he had 12 points, 9 points, 8 points, and an abysmal 2 points, but it is what it is. Sometimes that just happens if you're not utilized. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, no one likes him, so you could probably get him for free. And he's a valuable handcuff on one of the best offenses in the league. I know it's disgusting. I don't like it. I put CEH frowny face on the little chalkboard next to me. But when it comes to values, he kind of is one with some contingent upside on that offense. So give me some CEH. Ugh. For the Raiders, we'll, of course, go with Dylan Lobb. Dylan Lobb is the pass-catching running back on the Raiders. He already has the role. It may not be public yet, but he has it. It is a backfield split between Zamir White and Dylan Lobb. Dylan Lobb is going to catch a tremendous amount of passes from Gardner Minshew next season, and he's going to well outperform his value. Last year, Zamir White only had 98 receiving yards in 7 games and only 15 receptions. Dylan Lobb, for example, had 300 receiving yards in a single game last year, and his receiving totals in college has gone up every single year. 4 receptions, 22 receptions, 49 receptions, and then 68 receptions for 859 receiving yards last year at the University of New Hampshire. This is a true satellite back, and the Raiders need one. He's going to be one, and I'm going to scoop him up wherever I can, get some Dylan Lobb. And the final player to talk about today is Greg Dulcich on the Denver Broncos. This is the last tight end and last player we'll be talking about. But Greg Dulcich right now, similar to Jelani Woods, just really has not been able to stay healthy, but has some good athleticism. All of his workout metrics are in the 65th percentile or higher. He has the 3rd round draft capital. He's got good size at 6'4", 240 pounds, and he's only 24 years old. And there's not much competition out in Denver. I know Adam Troutman is there and Peyton likes him, but he's still a very standard, not very versatile tight end. He's more of a blocker. Greg Dulcich is the receiving tight end here on this offense if he can stay healthy. So we can't really talk about last year as he only had 3 receptions. But in his rookie season, it was pretty good, right? We all got pretty hyped about Greg Dulcich, especially going into last season. So I think the hype should be back. Right now, Greg Dulcich, if you go to PlayerProfiler, his tight end ranking is tight end 33. But I think that he is probably going to take himself and be the receiving tight end on this offense that I actually believe is going to take a step forward. I think that Bo Nix isn't going to bust. I like him there. And I think that this offense is going to finally be able to click with the right quarterback at the helm, with Sean Payton feeling comfortable again with his just whole offense in general. Dulcich in his rookie season actually saw 4 games with 8 or more targets, signifying that he really can be a volume hog when asked to be. He finished top 10 his rookie season in slot snaps, route participation, deep targets, average target distance, air yard share, and was 15th in expected fantasy points per game at 8.8. So this guy has some potential here, Greg Dulcich, and he just looks right. Look at those locks, right? Look at those curly flowing locks. That just screams tight end to me. So anyway, the draft capital, the profile, the solid production, not much competition with an ascending offense in Denver. Give me some Greg Dulcich. Give me some Greg Dulcich. So that was 16 sleepers for you guys. Actually, I think 17. I think I gave a bonus one in there. And from every AFC team. So if you liked these, make sure you tune in tomorrow as we'll be talking NFC sleepers, giving you 16 more of them. But for now, why don't we go ahead and hop into the chat, see if we have any questions. Thank you all so much for tuning in, by the way. Does anyone know why Brendan Rice fell in the draft? We do not. We do not know. Jasickier Woods, please. Give me some Woods. Anyone still stashing Jeremy Ruckert? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Blake Watson, maybe. I just want to hear more. I think he's like, even deeper of a sleeper than Greg Dulcich. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I just want to hear more. But yeah, I mean, the hype is really building around this guy, Blake Watson. Chris Olave or Drake London? Drake London. It's close. I'm honestly not a huge Drake London guy, but I also am not the biggest Chris Olave guy. I think both are really about the same. But if you were to ask me who I think has the highest ceiling, I would go with Drake London. I still think that Drake London has a lot more to tap into, whereas I think Chris Olave has kind of shown us who he is at this point, which is a really good receiver, don't get me wrong. But I think Drake London has just a little bit more of potential than Chris Olave does. Where's Estime going? It kind of really depends, but I mean, he's kind of at the end of the draft right now in best ball. And then in rookie drafts, I've seen him go in the 3rd. I've seen him go in the 4th. I've seen him go in the 5th. It really, really does depend. But he's another guy that has some potential here on the Broncos offense too. If anything happens to Javonte Williams, him and Blake Watson are interesting to keep our eye on in Denver. Let's see. Nothing over on Instagram. So, guys, thank you. What do I think of the Chargers wide receivers? I think it's just more I'm going to buy Justin Herbert. I don't know which one I want. I'll take a shot on all of them. I think Josh Palmer should be totally fine. I think DJ Chark is probably going to be a good one. I actually think DJ Chark has some good potential here, but it's probably going to be Ladd McConkey leading in terms of targets and receptions. The big question mark with McConkey, as I keep bringing up, is just, how many touchdowns, how many yards, even if he is getting a ton of volume. And that's just the big question mark when it comes to him. But I think they all have some good potential here. I mean, Justin Herbert's an awesome quarterback, so his wide receivers are probably going to be good. But that is everything I have for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was another fun episode of Wake and Take, and you guys were a great audience as always. I'll see you all tomorrow for some NFC sleepers. You all have a terrific Thursday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.